Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a city full of superheroes? To literally see people fly across the sky? Crap.
What are you up to, Angus?
Oh, hey, Sal. I'm trying to record an ad for the podcast.
Heroes don't do paperwork?
Yeah, that one.
Need any help?
Yeah, actually. I'm just trying to tell people about the show, about how you and I work at a newspaper in Super City, and how we interview various citizens, from the people we call neighbors to the city's greatest heroes. But I'm having trouble wording it.
You could just use that section you recorded and put that in.
Huh. Yeah, I suppose I could. Thanks, Sal.
Don't worry about it. I'm off to the office supplies store. It got hit with a shrink ray, so everything is 50% off. Want to come?
You know what? I kind of do. Oh, for those of you hearing this, if you want to hear more about the thrilling adventures and heroics of Super City, come check out Heroes Don't Do Paperwork on the Podcaster Network. All right, let's go.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom.
I'm Laura.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Brad.
And we are the Pixar Pals, or you might know us as
Disney Dummies!
Oh boy, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Disney Dummies Cross Pixar Pals. You might be wondering, hey, what is this episode all about? Haven't you all caught up to all of the Pixar movies? If this is your first time joining in on Disney Dummies Cross Pixar Pals, we are the dummies. We watch every single Disney theatrical animated release and Pixar theatrical animated release, and we talk about them in depth. We talk about the summary, the animation of it all, who fucks, hot takes, all sorts of things. And we've caught up. As of this recording, we have caught up to all of the Disney movies, all of the Pixar movies, and now we are mining for content. So that's where we are today. And
dig. It's all we have to, because we're mining.
Oh, is that a Snow White thing?
Isn't that what the dwarves sing?
It's Snow White.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The very first episode.
Yeah.
Wow.
Throwing it back.
Boys, really throwing it back.
Throwback.
Jeez. I thought it was like, the Frozen people when they're digging at the beginning of that movie. I thought it was that.
Beautiful, powerful, magical.
Yeah, it's not that. It's
the
not
worst
that.
Disney song.
Anyways, yes.
Oh,
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, save it. Anyways, yeah, so we are kind of searching in our souls what kind of content that we want to make. Obviously, we are going to be talking about the new Disney movies when they come out, the new Pixar movies as they come out, but there is so much Disney Pixar content out there. And we asked ourselves, if we had a chance to do another Brave episode, would we? Would ya?
Oh, I see what you're doing there.
And we said, yeah, we would do that. So here we are. We are talking about, we're doing a book review, which is very unlike us. Very exciting. Our first, maybe only book review that we'll do. But we are talking about 2022's Bravely book. It's called Bravely.
wow. I didn't know it was so recent.
Yeah, it's
2022?
super
Fresh.
recent. Today's structure is going to be a little bit different than other Disney Dummies Pixar Pals episodes, but we're going to try to do our best to fit it in the mold here. But this book is written by Margaret Stiefvater. She is an American writer of young adult fiction.
She goes by Maggie.
Maggie
Stiefvater.
Steve, really?
Stiefvater.
Stiefvater?
The internet told me it was Vader.
You might be right. Like Darth Vader kind of thing?
Yeah, but with a T.
Okay, I'm going to go with your thing. She is best known for her fantasy series, The Wolves of Mercy Falls and The Raven Cycle. Two series, I have no idea what that is, but I want to get into the nostalgia really quickly because, there's not really much nostalgia, but it's a good setup of why we are talking about the book Bravely today. If you listen to our episode on Brave, we had a lot to say about that. We're not going to rehash Brave for you, but
I should pause now and go back and listen to that if you haven't, then come back.
It's a juicy episode, but I do remember being the one in charge of the Pixar particulars, and I remember coming in there with like some fun facts, all these things, and then I discovered that there was a Brave sequel in book form called Bravely. And that's kind of where this whole thing became, was just like, oh, geez, Brave is one of those things that I would see a sequel for. It's not happened yet, which is weird for, as of this recording, Disney not to do because, they love their sequels. So it was interesting that the Brave sequel is a book. And I remember in the reviews of this thing, by preliminary research, it was like, this book's actually pretty good and it's more mature than the movie and all these things. And we're like, hey, that'd be fun to read one day. Maybe we'll do that on vacation. And the dummies, we all went on vacation back in December of last year in 2023.
We sure did.
And it was awesome. We went to the Dominican Republic. We kicked up our feet. It was an amazing time. Sam got food poisoning. That was bad, but it was still a good time. And Laura surprised Sam with a really nice gift.
And I waited until Sam had a few drinks because I thought she'd be super excited that way. And she was. And so essentially both of these dummies, they were both reading Bravely on vacation. And it's taken us all the way up till now to actually do a book review, and I thought it'd be a fun idea. We needed some time for it to sink in.
That's right. We wanted to.
I was also reading It's Britney Bitch, so
so good.
Is that the name of the book?
No, it's the Shania Twain song, "The Woman in Me."
Okay.
You also read it.
I did. I mean, I listened to an audiobook, but that's neither here or there. We're talking about Bravely. And we wanted to wait till we caught up to everything and, do some bonus episodes before we dive into the next big thing. And before we get into our version of the summary and everything, does anybody else have any type of quote unquote nostalgia surrounding Bravely?
I do, because I've read it twice now, because I read it in December and January. And I'm not going to tell you how I feel about it, but I will say that as I was rereading it, just this past couple of weeks, I could not remember what happened. I remembered the first quarter and a bit, and then after that it was just a big blank. So it was like reading it for the first time. Is there something wrong with my brain? Is that something concerning? Should I see a doctor?
I mean, you read a lot of books, so it's fine if you don't remember the young adult fiction of Bravely.
I guess.
There's all those drinks on vacation.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
That's it. Actually, I remember on vacation you were reading a notebook that was completely blank and you thought it was Bravely, so...
What are you talking about?
I'm gaslighting Laura.
Oh, you were making a joke. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. No.
Good effort.
Yeah, it was a good effort, but it went through your head, so it's fine. It's fine. Hey, listen, so we're going to do a summary right now, and the summary is going to look a little different. If you've tuned into any episode of Disney Dummies Cross Pixar Pals, we usually get into the weeds. We usually go minute to minute, action by action, not on purpose. That's just what ends up happening when you watch a movie and write down your thoughts about it. But I told the group beforehand and multiple times, even before we hit record, that we will not be doing that for today's episode. We're going to go through highlights and Laura and Sam are going to take us through that. I should also mention Brad and I have not read the book. I barely know what's happening in this book. I only know enough because I had to do the rest of the segments for this episode. But I assume, Brad, you have no idea what this book even is or what it is, but you don't know what is happening.
Correct. I mean, I'm even confused about is this an officially licensed Disney novel? It's an official sequel?
I have a thing for that. I will talk about that after. And so
I love that. So I feel free to interject us, and we can we still want to interact with you. And some of my favorite other podcast formats are one person researches a thing and teaches the other people about it. So I'm excited to try it out with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll ask tons of questions, I'm sure. I've always had tons of questions about the lore and history of Brave.
True.
How did her mom become a bear? They do explain that in the movie. It's just silly. Okay, so I'm going to read the synopsis for the people at home, but Laura and Sam are going to go into a much deeper quote unquote summary here.
I feel like we should also disclaimer now. Obviously, every other episode of Disney Dummies times Pixar Pals, we get into it in depth. So there's obviously spoilers, but I feel with those ones, I kind of assume people are listening to it having maybe watched the movies, but they're a little more mainstream and just popularized, that I feel people have probably watched them and then listened to us. or I can't imagine if you don't give a shit listening to us. But for this one specifically, like there will be spoilers. And so like if you want a like feeler of if you should read it, we should tell you that now. Like, do you want to stop listening and go read this book? Laura should like, I don't know. Just saying. There's going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you're at all interested in this and want to read more about Merida's YA adventures, pause and go read the book.
I will. How about this? I'll read the summary for the people at home, like the synopsis, like the one that they've written on like Google Reads or whatever like that. And it's just a few, like it's like one paragraph. And if that intrigues you, stop the podcast and read the book. Otherwise, Laura and Sam will get into it, and maybe they'll convince you to read the book or
not to. Who knows?
Who knows? I have a feeling it's the latter, but I will not say anything. Here we go. So the synopsis. What if you had 1 year to save everything you loved? One princess. Merida of Dunbroch needs a change. She loves her family, jovial King Fergus, proper Queen Eleanor, the mischievous triplets, and her peaceful kingdom. But she's frustrated by its sluggishness, each day the same. Merida longs for adventure, purpose, challenge, maybe even someday love. 2 gods. But the fiery princess never expects her disquiet to manifest by way of Feradak. Okay, sure. An uncanny supernatural being tasked with rooting out rot and stagnation, who appears in Dunbroch on Christmas Eve with the intent to demolish the realm and everyone within. Only the intervention of the Kalach. Okay. An ancient entity of creation. My God, there's some confusing stuff already. Gives Merida a shred of hope. Convince her family to change within the year or suffer the eternal consequences. And then it says 3 voyages in caps. We're almost done. Under the watchful eyes of the gods, Merida leads a series of epic journeys to kingdoms near and far in an attempt to inspire revolution within her family. But in her efforts to save those she loves from ruin, has Merida lost sight of the clan member grown most stagnant of all, herself? And then in caps, 4 seasons to save Dunbroch or see it destroyed forever. There's a lot going on here.
That was a lot.
That is a lot. That's a lot.
In summary, 1 princess, 2 gods, 3 voyages, 4 seasons.
That's right. That's what it says at the back of the book. Okay, so if that at all intrigued you, stop the podcast.
And I think, so are we allowed to know roughly like how much time it took the 2 of you? Because that might also be important if people want to read this or not.
It is 367 pages, large print.
Okay.
It flies by. I feel like I read half of this in one sitting on the weekend.
Yeah, you read it. You basically read it in a weekend for the most part.
Yeah, Laura did the same.
I would say maybe like 6 hours.
Well, there you go.
All right, now we are officially going to get into it. Laura, can you give us the highlight summary of the first half of the book?
I can, and I'll start off with a prologue. The prologue of this book is basically introducing us to characters. And the first characters that we meet are the aforementioned Feradak, who is the god of destruction. And, first we meet, let me just remind myself how to pronounce this. Kalach, who is the god.
Is that how you were saying it in your head the whole time?
Can you teach me this like right now?
Yes.
So, what is it?
Kalach.
Like
yuck.
Kalach.
Like yuck.
I'm going to go ahead and say that it's okay if you pronounce it wrong because the audience will understand.
How are you saying it, Sam? Because I was saying Kalach.
I was saying Kalach.
Yeah, Kalach.
Kalach. I don't know. I kind of read the word but didn't like picture a sound in my head.
So Kalach is the first god that we're introduced to, and she's sort of like the god of creation. She brings life and brings growth and prosperity. And then there's another god named Feradak, who I called Feradak as I was reading it, but Feradak is the god of destruction because everything in the world must be in balance. So where there is creation, there must be destruction and vice versa. The other characters in this book, the main characters, are the Dunbroch family. So that is Merida's family. You're familiar with these characters from the Pixar movie Brave. Merida is the princess, the redhead who rides Angus the horse and has a fierce spirit and will not be tied down unless she wants to be. She has a father named Fergus, a very large, jovial warrior of a man, and a mother, Eleanor, a very queenly queen, quite serious, very proper.
She was the bear in the movie.
Yeah. And then she has 3 younger brothers, Hubert, Hamish, and Harris.
Which I want to pause
Yes.
and say book talk here.
Yeah.
I found that very annoying, their names being so similar
Yeah.
in this.
Constant
because
struggle.
the first half of the book, I was like, yeah, I don't know who's who. Like, I don't care enough. The second half, they start kind of different. Like, they have more personality. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is this one. This is this one. But I found at least 1 or 2 parts where even the author and editor didn't catch, where I'm pretty sure it was like they swapped. It was like a mistake. There's one point where Hubert sends a letter back home, but he says like love. He like talks about himself in the letter, and I was like, that was a fuck up. That was supposed to be like the other brother, and I was like, okay.
I could see that happening because I remember a few times where I'm like, wait, now Harris is the serious one? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in the movie, they operate as one character.
They're like a rat king in the movie. They're just all rolling around in one ball together all the time. Yeah. So this one, we do get to see some like their unique personalities. Those of them who have personalities.
And do we know roughly like how old they are now?
So Merida is 20. They don't actually say it in the book, but I just saw online that like it doesn't really say, but around 20. And so I feel like the boys are like, if they were like 5 years old in the movie, they're definitely more than 9 years old now. They're like teenagers, I would say, maybe like
I thought that
I
assumed they were like young teens.
So I feel like the age difference between them has sort of like shortened, or maybe Merida's older than 20 years old. That probably makes more sense. So this is the family Dunbroch. I can't remember whether the honorary member of the family is also, yes, she is introduced. Her name is Lizzie.
Right away.
So Lizzie was hired as a maid when her mother passed away. Her mother was a maid in the household, and Lizzie was hired to replace her. But Lizzie has sort of wormed her way into becoming like another member of the family, and they don't really expect her to do anything. And everyone's always trying to help her because she just seems like a really helpless person. So everyone's always like giving her lots of attention and letting her get away with stuff, which can sometimes drive Merida a little bit nuts. So those are the characters that we need to know, and we're going to meet some more along the way, but that's where the prologue introduced all of these characters. All right, so chapter 1. Merida's hanging out, and I'm not going to go with chapter.
Yeah, this is already.
I'm just noting that we've moved on from the prologue and we're starting into the book. So Merida hears a knock on the door. That's basically the entire chapter. And she's hanging out in the kitchen having some snacks, and she hears a knock on the door, and it's a cold winter's night. I believe it's Christmas Eve. And she opens the door, and there's no one there, and she's like, what's going on? And then she hears another knock, and she's like, all right. And she looks outside, and she's like, this is annoying. And so she goes out, and she eventually sees this figure in the distance of what appears to be a man wearing these beautiful oxblood gloves. The gloves come up a lot.
He sure is. He's wearing those
stunningly
gloves.
Beautiful leather oxblood gloves.
Oxblood gloves?
And he is peeling one of these gloves off.
Ugh.
Oxblood color. They're not. They're made of leather.
Color, yeah.
The color is oxblood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's pulling a glove off, and she's like, "Hey, you! What are you doing?" And he sort of like panics, and then she chases after him. So into the woods they go. Keep in mind, it is a dark winter night. She's not wearing shoes because she's Merida, and she follows adventure wherever it goes. She chases him through the woods, through the river, wherever. And she finally catches up to him, and she's like, who the heck are you? And he's like, I am Firadoc. And she's like, what does that mean? He's like, I'm the god of destruction, and I am here to destroy your kingdom. And she's like, absolutely not. And he's like, no, for real. That's what I'm here to do. And he explains how Dunbroch has got out of balance because it used to be this very productive and vibrant place, but over time under Eleanor and Fergus's rule, they've really kind of neglected it and haven't like challenged their people or taken care of the physical spaces and really let everyone in the kingdom just like get away with doing the bare minimum, and there's not really any inspiration or motivation among them, and it's become a place that's like draining this balance. So he's there to destroy it, and Merida's like, no, like that doesn't make sense. Like, I've been traveling the world, look at all these things they've done. He's like, just because you're traveling doesn't mean you're contributing anything or accomplishing anything, because some storms move no rooftops. That's a line that's repeated a lot. It's sort of like the oxblood.
Question: did you read this in a Scottish accent?
I didn't. No,
I actually did it by the end. I was like, Merida specifically, not everyone else, but Merida. I was like picturing her voice.
Yeah, I don't actually pronounce the words in my head when I read them. I just like absorb them.
Because it's kind of interesting to like read a sequel to a movie because you've already got like the image and the voice and the attitude for the character while you're reading her. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like interesting.
I should say I didn't always. When I was like reading fast and like going, I was like, okay. But if I knew it was an important moment, I could like.
Well, there isn't like, a ton of dialogue, so I could see like reading the dialogue and the voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So when she talks, I'm like, oh, okay, now the voice.
Yeah.
But then when I tried to envision like anyone else's voice in this, like Faradak, I was like, oh, he should probably have the accent too. But when he talked, I couldn't picture it.
Yeah.
And maybe he wouldn't have the accent because
I mean, maybe not. He's a god.
We'll learn more about.
I mean, he's a Scottish god of destruction.
Is he though? It's hard to say.
I don't. Well, yeah.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Maybe.
Chapter 2.
So he's there to destroy, and Merida's like, okay, like trying to talk him out of it, trying to bargain with him, and then another figure appears, and that figure is Cailleach, who shows up and is like, you know what, Faradak, you don't need to do this. He's like, no, I literally do. It's my job. I have to. And she's like, oh, but come on, like, give him a break. He's like, everything shows me that this place needs to be destroyed. She's like, all right, let's listen to this, Merida. Let's make a deal. And so they make a bargain where Merida has 1 year to change everyone she loves.
Her whole
change
family.
Everyone's fate.
To change the fate?
Bravely. What if you had 1 year to save everything you loved?
That's like the sub-tagline.
Tagline of the book.
Can you say that one more time? I talked over you.
Oh, yeah. What if you had 1 year to save everything you loved? It's on the cover of the book. So that's basically, it's been set up. We're in like chapter 3 by this point.
And that was really good. But I just want one more reading, obviously in an accent.
Yeah. What if you had 1 year to save everything you loved?
That's actually really
That was
good.
a little bit Irish,
I don't
actually.
know. That's pretty freaking good. That's way better than I could have done.
It was more Irish than Scottish.
No, that's great. Okay.
But anyways, we're back in it. And so they make this deal. And the deal is that Merida has to show Faradak her progress, and Faradak has to show Merida what he does, which is destroy things so that she can better understand him. And she has to change everyone in her family, including herself and including Lizzie. So those are the stakes.
Can I ask a question here? When you say what scale are these gods like what kind of change are these gods looking for to be like, hey, you did it, because it could be any change or
very vague.
It has to be like an internal change. Like you have whoever you are now
as a person,
whoever you are now.
Yeah.
It's not taking up a new hobby. It's changing as a person.
So like how her mom changed from a bear to a mom, but like that
not physically.
But that change happened because there was an internal
so like
change.
that change would have counted.
Okay.
But now they've become stagnant, so they need to change again.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah. Okay. So
is the whole issue that the ruling family is like too soft on their citizens, and this guy's saying they need to be bigger assholes and like
not assholes, they need to be better to their people,
but more involved. I think they're just sitting back. I think they're just not
complacent.
Doing much.
That's a good way to put it. And like basically the kingdom's going to go to ruin. And has already started going.
Right. Okay. It's like they're not fixing roads. They're not making new waterways. They're not like developing.
They're doing the bare minimum.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
if that.
And they used to hold like, I feel like maybe
Like
I'm
an annual
paraphr- or
hunt.
whatever.
Yeah.
They used to have a hunt that they stopped doing. They used to like have everyone in the kingdom for the Christmas feast like come in, and I think that got smaller or not as involved as well.
The castle's in disrepair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just like, I mean, like, I know it's a time skip, but like in the movie, it seems like the rulers, like that family, were quite involved with their kingdom. So it's a bit of a leap to be like, and then they got lazy.
But that's what happened. That's what happened.
Okay, sure. Well, that's life, baby.
So
It does seem brutal that they're gonna get
yeah,
ruined for this.
but
Like,
but hey,
we'll get there.
let's see what happens. Let's see where Fear Duck's
it's
coming
crazy.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
the
knows best, right?
the stakes are set. Merida heads back to the castle. She climbs into bed, and the next day she wakes up, and it's Christmas Day.
I like how after that she just goes to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm sure she
you
had
just spoke to
tormented
two
dreams.
gods about getting your kingdom destroyed. Time for a nap.
And then you go to bed.
He knows. I feel like magic in this world too, to like touch on that, is like a weird thing that they talk about a little more in this than I feel like in the movie. Because like we obviously know there was magic in the other movie. Like magic is a thing that exists in this world with the like whatever. What are those? The sprite things. The
orbs.
the wisps or
The
something.
wisps.
wisps,
Yes.
the will-o-wisps.
Yeah.
And like obviously her mom turned into a bear last time, and like we're all aware that there's magic in this world, but like in their universe, it's not so like obvious that like everyone knows about magic. Like there's people that seek it out, and there's people they bring this up a few times where it's like there's people that magic seeks out, and there's people that seek out magic, and like, do you believe in it? Do you see it? Are you like whatever? So Merida, I feel like from the get-go is very like nonchalant. Like she's not fazed by the fact that some gods like reached out to her. She's just like, yeah, like obviously has gone through this magical thing already, so this isn't like a like, whoa, gods,
Just another
like,
Tuesday.
yeah. She's very nonchalant about the fact that she's doing, like, she's not nonchalant, she's very worried about this whole deal, but the magic aspect is not like, oh my god.
Yeah, 'cause she's seen it before. Well, not she hasn't seen gods before, probably,
But she's heard of them.
And she's also not allowed to like tell anybody about this deal.
Of course.
No. Oh, yeah, that's an important part. She can't tell anyone.
Yeah.
So the next day we wake up, it's Christmas morning, and a new maid walks in. Normally it would be Lizzie's job to help Merida get dressed. Not that she ever does that, but a new maid named Isla comes in. She's like, oh, I'm here to help you, and she helps her dry her dress. And by the way, Lizzie's called off the wedding. So Lizzie was supposed to get married to the cabbage, and then at the last minute was like, actually, I'm not in love with him. I don't want to marry him.
And they ever say his actual name? Because like,
no,
I feel like
just
this
the
is
cabbage.
a mean nickname.
Yeah.
It's a mean nickname that
Why do
Merida
they call him the
uses,
cabbage?
but
'Cause
nobody.
he's just there or something.
I don't know why they call him that, but they just call him the cabbage, which makes me feel like he's like the dud
Yeah.
or something.
But
Like in Arrested Development where he calls what's her name Plant.
yeah, it's like it's definitely a term they use in like an insulty kind of way,
Yeah.
which is whatever. But like I don't know, it seems
To be
mean-spirited
fair,
because we don't
though-
know him at all.
to be fair, Fergus does give him 2 cows for his trouble.
For his troubles.
So-
yeah. Sorry, the wedding
The
didn't
cabbage
happen.
isn't
Here's
walking
pretty nice.
away from the deal with nothing. And yeah, since it's Christmas Day, they've got this big feast planned. So the family sits down to eat their dinner first, and then they're like, all right, let's go to this feast. And then Eileen, the cook, is like, actually, there's a bunch of angry guys in the Great Hall, and they need to talk to you. And they also destroyed our feast and fed it to their dogs. And Fergus and Eleanor are like, come on, what? It's Christmas. But they go to talk to these people who are very angry and they don't know why they're there. And of course, Merida, being Merida, has to go and spy on them. So she goes upstairs and like peeks out and looks over into the hall. And this group of angry men is there representing the Dazakhtach.
Which sounds like an evil.
sounds
Before I read it,
evil.
I'm
It
like,
sounds evil.
Yeah, it sounds Nazi-ish.
And it means the madman. And he is the leader of a clan who is there to force Dunbroch to swear fealty to the Dazakhtach's clan, either by marrying Merida off to one of their own or by having their sons, Hubert, Hamish, and Harris, join the army. And we know that Merida is not getting married to anybody who she doesn't want to get married to, so that's a non-starter. And these boys are not meant for battle. We talk about Eleanor and Fergus kind of neglecting their people and their family maybe a little bit. And part of that is that the boys should have gone through like army training, and that's not a thing, or soldier training. That's not a thing that they did. They don't know how to protect themselves. So that's not going to happen. And Fergus and Eleanor are really just trying to blow these guys off. Wolftail is like the mouthpiece of the Dasaktach who showed up and is there like being all threatening and stuff. But he's not going away. He's like, if you don't, we're going to come and like rain fire on you and like destroy your kingdom before Feardock even has a chance to. And they're like, oh no, come on. Like, we're all friends here. And he's like, no, absolutely not. And so Merida senses that this guy means business, and she also senses an opportunity. So she stands up from her hiding space and she's like, hey, everybody, I've got a proposal, again with the bargaining. And she says, I will complete 3 diplomatic trips to other kingdoms, and at the end of the year, decide on which kingdom I want to join as kin. And that will show our fealty to the Dasaktach. And Wolftail's like, I don't know. And she's like, no, really, I'll do it. And he's like, okay, yeah, we could do that. All right. So that's the deal. Merida has no intention of like really following through and joining another family. Eleanor and Fergus are not going to hold her to this. They're going to forget about it the moment the Wolftail leaves. But the deal is made. And so Wolftail and his gang leave. And this is when the wheels start turning for Merida, because she's like, this is my big chance. I can make change happen by getting my family involved in this. And maybe at the end of the year, we'll fix this one problem while also making the changes that we need. And so her parents are very much ready to just let it go. But she's like, no, this has to happen. And so together with them, they kind of talk it over and make a few suggestions about places that she could go. And those places are Ardbarach, which is like a kingdom nearby, where that is a place where... Actually, we don't know much about it. We don't know much about it at this point. We just know that it's fairly close by. Another place called Kinlochie, which is where Fergus spent some time in his youth and has very fond memories of. And then a place called Aelin Glan, which is somewhere that Eleanor seems very hesitant to go to, but Fergus is like, why don't you check that out again? And she's like, oh, I don't know. But so we don't know much about this place, but it's going to come up again later. So that's the beginning. And basically Merida and her crew, including a couple of staff, I guess, Gil Peter and Hubert, her brother Hubert, and Harris's dog, Bryn. It's spelled Brinonn, but I think it's pronounced Bryn.
Merida also sees this as like an opportunity because she needs to change her whole family in a year. Mm-hmm. So she's going to try and tag people along on these journeys
exactly.
to hopefully incite change in them.
Yeah.
She's not going to go alone. She's got it like planned out that she'll bring people in.
Does the big boob lady come? You know, in the movie?
Is that Eileen?
The witch?
The big boob lady. You remember how they like...
Oh, big in the
kids
kitchen.
Were like,
I think that's Eileen. Yeah.
Animate a shot
stays at home.
of like the kids going into her.
I remember.
She stays at home.
She stays at home. Okay.
Yeah.
Darn.
She stays at home. She doesn't go. Actually, she might go on the third one. Maybe.
Does she? I can't remember. You'll have to summarize.
Eleanor brings a lot of people on that one. So
actually, you're right. She does. She brings
a
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so Ardbarach, we head to Ardbarach, and she's brought along Hubert, and they're expected to be greeted as diplomatic envoys, like royal family members of another kingdom. And instead they are treated, what's the word that they use, Sam? Like they're basically there to stay with them for a little while and like live as a child in their family kind of thing. So which they have like dozens and dozens of other young men and women living there. And all of the women go to their sewing classes and their not cooking classes. They didn't cook, but like they're basically just in like lessons
like they're
all day long.
Students.
Yeah. Yeah. And the men or the boys are all in like soldier training all day long.
They also we'll skim over this quickly, but they do get lost on their way to this one, and Feardock
shows up and helps them find their way.
And he's like, I wasn't supposed to get involved with any of this because he's like the god, but he was like shows up and kind of like helps them point the way. He's like, you guys are going in the wrong direction. You didn't know where you're going.
He's the evil one, the destruction.
Yeah.
No
one said he's
the
evil,
destruction,
but he's
Seems
the god
like a
of
pretty
destruction.
good dude to me.
Yeah.
He was just like, I need you to get there, like to do this and whatever, and he just leaves.
And also, it means that he was watching her. And I remember when we were reading this in the Dominican, we were like, maybe like, I don't know, less than 10
Laura,
chapters
if you're
in.
going where I think you're going with this, I was like, when do I bring this up? Because
So I feel like this is part of it. This is sort of it, because when we were talking about it, Sam was like, I feel like there's something going on between Merida and Feardock. And I was like, no way. And now I'm reading it a second time and I'm like, oh, he was watching her. Okay, I see it. Just maybe a little bit.
It was literally like page
tension.
5, and I was like, I hope she bangs this evil god. And Laura's like, that's not what kind of book this is.
It's not that kind of book, Sam. So
she was like, no. I'm like, all right.
So they make it to Ardborough and very quickly become involved in these super regimented daily schedules where Mistress McLagan is just like treating Merida like every other young woman there with a maid, and the girls do their thing during the day for their lessons and the maids do their thing during the day, and the boys are all in our soldier training. And at the end of a couple of weeks, Merida is like, absolutely not. This is not for me. I got to get out of here. I've done my time and this is not it. And so she and Lizzie hatch a plan to get out of there. They managed to do so early one morning, but they're like, well, we have to bring Harris back with us too. Or sorry,
it's
Hubert. Hubert, thank you. And they find Hubert and he's like, nah, man, I'm having the time of my life. This is exactly what I want. I love the people here. I love the schedule here. I'm learning so much. I'm sticking around. And Merida's like, what the fuck? But then she's like, you know what? You've got to change. You're changing. I'm going to leave you here. And she and Lizzie and Bryn the dog head back to Dunbroch. And that is the first adventure. And then it takes a while to get the second adventure going. So that's the winter. We're heading into spring.
Yeah, because we come home between and like,
yeah,
not back to back to back. So that was like
not quite. Yeah,
that was spring.
That was winter because it was just after New Year's.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're back, and this is where we get a little bit more insight into the family, into the kingdom, and how the kingdom is really like fallen into disrepair. So there's all these castle walls that you can walk around the top of, but you used to be able to walk up and down towers, but they're all just like full of junk and debris and animals living there and that sort of thing. So it's very hard to like do those walks, and there's no like windows in the house, and the sitting room is all backed up with smoke, so they don't hang out in there. So it's just not very well taken care of. And so that's just like a thing in the back of the mind going into the next journey. But before then, Feardock has to fulfill his side of the bargain, which is to show Merida like what he does. And so one day he brings her to this place, her and Lizzie, to this place called Keithneil. And it is a village not too far away that she's never explored before. And when Merida and Lizzie show up, it's small enough that people are like, oh, you're the princess, but they don't really like know what that means. So they just kind of treat her as like a special person, and they have a great day, just like being one of the villagers and exploring and eating and celebrating. And then Feardock is like, okay, gotta show you something. And he brings her over to this sign for Keithneil, and there's a handprint in it. And he says, put your hand there. And she's like, I'm not going to put my hand there. He's like, put your hand there. And she's like, oh, okay. She puts her hand there, and then he touches the stone and says, show her your past or whatever. And then we see the past of Keithneil, which came up as a village and then became a very prosperous place where people were living happily. And then these outsiders came in and like brought war and destroyed the place and put the citizens who survived into slavery and just like tore through all the resources in the place and did horrible things. And then Feardock showed up and put his hand there, and that caused a plague that eventually like took out everyone who lived there. And then the original inhabitants were able to return and then rebuild like this beautiful, prosperous village. Which is what it is now.
I have to say, Sam's nodding like, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And here I am, and maybe Brad, you feel the same. I'm like, what? Like, what's happening right now?
And she's sort of watching this on like a time lapse video, like super fast forward.
Simply like Sparks Notey like way of putting it is just like, and I think she forgot that this was part of the deal too. That deal that the gods made at the beginning was like, yeah, all your family has to change. Now she's like, okay, I'm gonna go to these places, but she's supposed to like keep them updated, and she forgets that like Feardock's also supposed to show her his side, because this I did think was a little muddy, and that's why I wanted you to go first, because I was like, did they actually explain this better than I remember at the beginning?
They didn't.
Merida's whole thing is like, if you give people the chance, they can change without you having destroyed them. Like she's basically like, Feardock, don't destroy my kingdom, we'll change on our own. Whereas his whole thing is like, people can't change, I need to intervene. So he has to show her examples of where he's intervened and how that went.
And how it's a positive thing.
Which again, it's weird because now that I'm like thinking about it, like these 3 trips she does were not really part of the original bargain. So the fact that he does come back like after every trip.
No, they
like,
were. Part of the bargain was that
they?
she had to report back to him and he had to like show her what he did.
Right. I'm just saying the trips outside of the village.
Oh, the
that
trip,
was because
yeah,
of
it
the
wasn't
wolf
necessarily
tail.
a
That
trip.
was because of the other thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like the way that it happens. I'm like, wait, this wasn't because there was a different deal. So, anyways, but yes, they're supposed to report back to each other essentially, and he gets to show her things too. When he was going to do that originally, if she wasn't doing these trips, I don't know, but he ends up just like coming back after every trip and being like, now I'm going to show you mine.
Let me fill you in. So I think like this begins to give Merida an idea of like, okay, maybe there is like a reason behind this, but I still don't think it's justified. I still don't think like that this is an acceptable thing to do, the destruction that you carry out. So that's what's going on in that plot. Meanwhile, Dasik sends Wolftail back to Dunbroch, and Wolftail walks in and he's like, what's the story? Heard you went to Ardbarroch. Didn't tell me about it. You're supposed to keep me in the loop. And she's like, oh yeah, shit, I should have done that. And this is like classic Merida, a demonstration that she hasn't changed yet, is that she didn't send the letter that she was supposed to send. But she's like, don't worry about it. Like, I did that. Here's some proof. And we got another trip coming up too. We're going to Kinlochie. And he's like, okay, well, you don't forget, you have to write to me and rawr and all this other stuff. So Kinlochie is Fergus, Hamish, and Merida and some others. And so they're heading out on that trip. And the thing to know about Hamish is that he's a scaredy cat. So how do you change a scaredy cat? You can't just like force someone to not be afraid of things anymore. And he's scared of everything. He's scared of like, he's a beautiful musician, but he's afraid to perform in front of people unless he's ordered to. He's afraid of animals. He's afraid of the dark. He's afraid of noises. He's afraid of just about everything. And we see that in some interactions that they have. Like they run into some wolves and then this group kind of comes in and saves them, but he doesn't want to interact with those people even though they're helping.
Also, I think so this is their second trip.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's before this one that she was expecting her mom to come on this one as well.
Oh, yes.
But her mom bails
Eleanor.
on the last second, and
Merida was so
gets
upset.
really upset
Yeah.
by this, like very upset by it.
Because she's trying to change her mom too. And this is a classic Eleanor move, is to make a plan and not follow through. And she talks a lot about this trip to Spain that Eleanor had been planning for Merida and herself like years ago. That after so much planning, Merida realized like it was never going to happen. And she was so disappointed because it was something that she looked forward to for so long. So she was really like quite heartbroken when Eleanor like stayed home.
Yeah, they have like a tiff, and like Merida says some like mean things to her mom.
Oh yeah.
And it said at this point in the book, I don't know, Merida's been pretty mean to everyone.
Yeah. She's trying to
whole
move
time
everything
so far.
along, but
She's a
she's not
fiery
actually.
woman.
She's not allowed to talk about it with anyone.
Like explaining Hamish, like right now, like he's the scaredy cat. He's this, he's that. I'm like, it's such an unsympathetic way to look at him, which I guess is her fault. But it's just like, I don't know, this kid clearly has anxiety and like
all kinds of issues. So they arrive at Kinlochie, which is this beautiful seaside kingdom. Very like, imagine what's that place in Game of Thrones where the Lannisters live? King's Landing, but like without like shit everywhere. So they get to this kingdom and it's really quiet. It's really quiet for a beautiful spring day. But they arrive at the castle, and then Fergus is like, "Oh, it's me, Fergus, here to see my friend Ronald the King." And the two servants there just sort of like don't pay them attention, and to the point where it's like, are they high? Like, what's going on? Are they tweaking out? So eventually they just like wander off into the castle, and he's like, I don't think they're going to get the king. So then Merida and Hamish and Fergus wander into the castle, and they're looking for the king, but really looking for anybody they can find. And everyone is in kind of a similar daze, and they end up just wandering through, can't find the king. But eventually they do find Rory, who is the king's son. And so they walk in and he's sort of like awoken from this stupor. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll get your money. Like, I'm just working on some books here, which is very clearly like something that's like just been on his mind for the last time, or like motions he's been going through over and over, is like people trying to collect from him. And he's like, yeah, just take whatever you want from the castle, like whatever you're owed. And they're like, this isn't right. And then they go out to the back of the castle, there's like, I feel like they're on a terrace overlooking the water or something.
I want to say this whole part
yeah,
has been built up really creepily.
Yeah,
like,
it's very
everything
creepy.
feels like a horror movie at this moment.
That's a good way to
I
put
would
it.
say they get there and like it feels like there was like a spell cast on this castle. Like the way they describe these people, like being nonchalant and apathetic, but in a like cartoonish, I would say, man, like it's not just like they are lazy or like don't care, but like they feel like possessed, like they feel like they have zero like minds or like anything. Like anybody they see in the castle just like stares at them and like goes back to their
Soulless.
business, doesn't care that they're there. Like it feels very possessed and weird. And continue on.
Yeah. So they find themselves on like a back terrace and they're looking out to the sea, and then Merida spots a familiar figure pulling off its oxblood glove and pressing its hand into the castle to start the destruction. And this isn't a plague like last time. This is instant destruction. This is a fire that is going to rage through the castle because of all of the dead plants that weren't taken care of, all of the dirty tapestries that have grown brittle and dry over time, all of these incredibly flammable things inside the house or inside the castle go up in flames instantly. And so they're like, shit. So they're like, okay, we have to escape through the water, but there's a giant water tornado, Little Mermaid style. So they can't go that way because they'll get sucked down into the ocean or the sea or whatever. And then, so they have to make their way back through the flaming castle. And Rory's still in this stupor. So Fergus is like, ugh, I've got to save this guy. He throws him over this horse and they try to make it through. Hamish, obviously terrified because this guy everything scares him. Obviously a deadly fire is going to scare the crap out of him. Trying to make it through on his own horse, and Merida's on foot, and they get separated and then they come together, and Rory has died, and then Fergus falls through the ground. But Hamish is like, it's my dad. And his dad's like trying to climb out of this flaming hole in the ground. And then Hamish very calmly gets his horse to pull Fergus out of this hole to save him. And then they all run out of the castle and out of the castle gate. And it's like the moment they're outside of the kingdom walls, everything is very still and very calm. And you realize that, yeah, Feardoc is like limited the destruction to the kingdom walls, and everything within it is going to be destroyed. And they hear screams as they walk away.
Wow.
I got the vibe that she sees like burning hands and like people reaching out, and like it feels like a very much like well, before it was more horror, now it's just like, yeah, tragic and like war torn, and like it just feels like everyone's suffering and whatever.
Wasn't this a Game of Thrones episode where
it feels like one?
She locks them. Cersei locks them all in like the hall, and then or has the bombs underneath.
Yeah, I have like an image of like
that.
these burning building, hands reaching out, and Faradak kind of being in the shadows and the fire, being like, well, I am nature.
I am nature.
Is what he says at some point in this chapter.
And
she like kind of remembers like, yeah, like he's not a thing you can fight because he's nature.
Wow. Yeah, that's one way to. Yeah, I feel like she won't bang him now. You know.
Yeah. Well, she's very upset about this.
I mean, I would be
very
as well.
upset about this. All right, I'm gonna
take it over,
Laura, you did
Sam.
such a good job.
Laura,
And
I have to say,
over.
you did do a really good job. And when we started this episode, I really thought we wouldn't be doing.
There's so much more plot in this than there is. We are seriously skimming. Like there's so much more. But there's so much more plot in this book than there is in a regular Disney movie. That's why I was like, there's no way it's going to be shorter.
Yeah, and you talked a lot more than I thought. I mean, that was impressive because I was like, I wouldn't have like remembered all that. But
read it twice.
Yeah, you did read it twice. And you've taken us, I did misjudge there because you have taken us a bit into summer. I think we're a bit over half with that. But anyways, because that was the second of the third travel.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be a little more vague in my talking, but you can like chime in or obviously interrupt me. So after that, I feel like the main takeaway from that excursion was just like essentially that she's mad at Faradak because she just saw him do what she knows he does. But this was like a really interesting example. Like, what are the odds that this god she has a bargain with happens to be at the place she decides she's going to go because he has to destroy it? It's like, wow, what are the odds? Like, you didn't have other I mean,
people are always hoping to run into their love interest, but not in these circumstances.
like that was insane that he showed up to do that, and then like that ruins her second trip, and like everyone's dead now. It's pretty extreme. And also like I only brought up the horror aspect of that one because, like I said, it felt very magical, but I was a little disappointed that they just like they all die, so it doesn't matter. And I guess it didn't matter, but I mean it kind of matters because Faradak obviously ruined, like killed the whole kingdom, being like, well, they clearly were stagnant and apathetic,
They
but I
weren't
was
really
like, yeah,
living
to
anyways.
a spooky degree though. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, in my head, like I said, it was like magic or something taken. Like, were they all really just like I said, that part felt outlandish to me because I was like, this is so extreme in the kingdom's behavior. Like, we're gonna kill, well, it's on the table that we're gonna kill Merida's kingdom because they've kind of like got lazy a bit, but then this kingdom is just like straight up possessed and like not even seeming like they just not the same. And like there is no context, and I don't feel like he even really gives any. He's like, well, you saw them, like they didn't do much anymore. And it's just like, man, I don't know. I felt like I needed more from that one. It was just so quick. And
Yeah,
they're like,
it was really
we're going
quick.
to this place. We get there, it all gets burned down and killed. And I was like, whoa. And it's like, if Faradak's going to be showing examples of like obviously he can't show how that one turned out because the time hasn't passed to see how that was a good thing he did. But like, yeah, obviously that seems bad in the moment. Obviously Merida's
sure.
mad because she's like, what the fuck? You just killed a whole kingdom.
Murderer.
And to me, that kingdom, that's where my issue is that kingdom seemed like they were in distress because for me it felt like outside, like I was like, what is happening here? But we're supposed to be like, no, that was a good thing. He did that because they needed it. But I was like,
For love.
I feel like they needed help.
Yeah.
Like, what was happening to
Yeah.
those people? So that's where I'm at with that second journey. Then she goes back home again. Boys, how are you keeping up? Before I take over, do we need clarification on anything?
No, I think you just, yeah. I don't know. There's a lot.
go?
It's a lot. It's a
I know,
lot.
and there's a
think I'm
lot
following,
happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
both a lot, but not like. I feel like the book lays it out in such a groundwork that
Sure.
it is simple to follow because we're like, we're going on a trip, we're back for a bit, we're going on a trip, we're back for a bit. So
And the
we've done
side
two of the
trips
three
between
trips.
each trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're back at the in between. We're heading back to the castle. After that whole incident, this is how Fergus changes. He gets back to the castle and he starts going ham on just
Extreme Makeover
renos.
Castle Edition.
Yeah, makeover castle because he's like getting rid of all the wood and updating everything to steel. He puts in windows everywhere. He's just like, I don't want what happened there to happen to us because it like went up in flames and all this shit. So he just starts like working on reinforcements and like making the place like the best it can
Cleaning
be.
the tapestries.
Yeah, cleaning things so there's nothing flammable. Like I feel like he goes like fire hazard mode basically, but that's his change. So we've got two people change now. We've got Hubert who has like left them to be in Ardbarok forever and be a soldier guy, and we've got
Fergus.
what's his name? Fergus. We've got Fergus who's now going ham on the castle. So two changes, not a bad start. Then they do this little like day trip to some well where this is just like the mom taking them out for a walk, and they go to this well, and I don't know how far away it is from the mom's always
It's
wanting
like
to go
in the
on walks,
woods by the house.
which made so they go on a walk with like Ela, the new maid, and Lizzie and Merida and the mom Eleanor, and they find this like holy well, and they're like talking about it and how it grants wishes when you like put something you love in it, and it's implied that that's where. Is this where it's? I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I don't think it really matters in this context, potentially. But Lizzie's mom, at one point, they say that Lizzie's mom went and threw something in the well because when Eleanor was giving birth to the triplets, she was going to die, and like one of the triplets was potentially going to die. So like Lizzie's mom goes in and like throws something in the well to like wish them to be okay, and they are. It's not they mention it, but I don't know like how like crucial a plot point that is. They notice this other rock that's there too, though, and
the stone.
there's a
of-
handprint in it, and there's a stone, and Lizzie or somebody that's with them is like, oh yeah, that's Faradak's rock, but like nobody really knows much about him or who he is or what he is. They're just like, oh, they just bring it up, and Merida's like, what, like Faradak's rock or whatever. Anyway, so they're all having this little moment around the well. And Merida, I think at this point, starts breaking into tears because like time's running out, and she like realizes nobody's changing, and she's like super upset about it. So she's crying. She starts crying, and her mom's like freaked out, like, why is Merida crying right now? And Merida can't tell her anything, but she was just like, I really need you to come on this next trip with me. Like, you can't bail. And like, I know they fought about it in the last one, but she was like, I need you to come. I need you to come. And she's like, so like freaking out about this that Eleanor's like, okay, like I'll come, like it'll happen. Like, so and she believes her this time. She's like, okay, like I think she's gonna come with me. So it's like kind of important. And then I think Faradak must come back at this point because he has to show her stuff.
Kennedy.
Yeah, so he has to come back. She's pretty mean to him at this point.
Yeah.
She basically tells him no one knows you even existed because The Rock, like nobody really knew his story and stuff. So she's pretty cold right now, especially because she just saw him kill that village. She's like, I don't know how you could like make me feel good about this, pretty much. And he's whatever. So she's just kind of being a dick to him. Oh, and we haven't even brought it up yet, and it's definitely already been established at this point. But when he shows up,
yes.
Everybody sees him as something different.
Yeah.
Merida always sees him the same, but everyone sees the ox glove.
Everyone sees the gloves.
Blood gloves.
But
everyone
he
sees
appears differently.
But he looks different. So whenever
every
he shows
time,
up, people...
Yeah, like if Eleanor sees him in the morning and the afternoon, she sees him as two different characters.
Yeah, so everyone's always seeing him as like someone else. So they're like, oh, why were you talking to that nun? Or why were you talking to that monk guy or whatever? But Merida always sees him the same. And he's asked her a few times at this point, like, what do I look like to you? And she won't tell him because she's being a bitch. And, and she's like, I don't want to tell you, like, whatever.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. And then it turns out, and I think we found this out at this point because like Hamish sees him at one point, and Hamish is the like scaredy cat one. And he sees him in the castle at one point, and he gets all freaked out because he's like, oh, you have a giant scar on your face or whatever. And anyways, after this, Faradak is talking to Merida, and he tells her that the people that others are seeing him as are people that he's killed basically, or have been like destroyed by his ruin. So anyone he's ever ruined, he like keeps the faces of, and people see him looking like that. But except for Merida, for whatever reason, he's like, you always see me the same, but everyone else, like whenever I appear, I just appear as like somebody I've killed basically. So he's like, just so you know, like I always remember and I carry it with me. She's like, whatever, I don't care. But he's like upset by it at this point. Like when he's telling this, he does seem like, as he's starting to like show her more, he like does seem kind of upset, but Merida's still like not really having any of it. So then they go on another little day trip because he's like, well, I have to show you my side of things now again. So this is like their second little outing, and he takes her to the Senadig of Fife, which is just like some harpist out in the woods. So we've gone from like, here's a village. The scope of these are just vastly different. He's like, here's a village of people that I like fucking destroyed because of colonialism. I don't know. But then now he's like, I'm just going to take you to this harpist who I didn't kill because he's still alive, but he like made a flood hat. So I guess the idea with this one was like, this harpist was so obsessed with playing his harp, and he would travel the kingdoms and like play his harp everywhere, and all he cared about was his harp. So I basically like made him be in a flood or something where
it was
harp got
his
destroyed.
hands. He damaged his hands.
Oh, he damaged his hands, so he couldn't play the harp anymore. Was there not a flood?
The flood
there
was
a
the
flood
last
somewhere
one.
in there where he like almost lost the harp. I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, he damages his hands so he can never play the harp again. And she's like, whoa, like cool, I guess. And they're like, because they're at this harpist house, and he's just like, I don't know. He brings her there to show, she has to touch the harp to see the instead of touching the rock, she has to touch the harp to see the story or whatever. So she sees that this man's hands got destroyed. But what happened after this ruin, the ruin of the harp, was that the guy basically got his life back because he wasn't so obsessed with his harp all the time.
Stop traveling.
Which, okay, I guess. Like, I don't know. I was like I said, the scopes of these are just so vastly different. And like, who are you to... I mean, I guess like he wasn't really hurting anyone, I guess, beside himself with his whole harp playing thing. But that was the whole point, I guess. It's just that like he lived such a better life after I damaged his hands and he could never play his harp anymore. And then they had to, and so at the end, they're like in his house basically. And so then the guy's like, well, what even brought you here? Like, why are you guys here? And she has to think on the spot because they don't really have a reason for being at this harp guy's house. And she's like, oh, my brother actually could use some harp lessons. So, because Hamish, the scaredy cat one, has always had like an affinity to music and stuff. So she uses this as an opportunity to start him getting harp lessons with this guy. And so that's a good thing, I guess. And then I guess we're like moving into the final trip. I don't think much happens between after the harp thing and that. So they're getting ready for this royal trip. And this one, I kind of like the description leading up to it. I was like thinking about Robin Hood when you see them like through the forest in their like things and with everyone around. Like that's kind of what I pictured, where like Eleanor is like a planner, you know. The other trips, they just kind of willy-nilly went on them. This one feels like a production. Like Eleanor's got the kitchen staff, like everyone's coming on the road and they're all in their like things and they're camping out on the road. And she has like planned this to a T. She has like bed cots for them. Like Merida is like, wow, I never would have like thought to pack all this things that I would need. Like it's such a mom move too. I feel like my mom's like that too. She'll like pack like a million things and I'm like, we're never gonna need that. And we do.
But
and I'm
it's
like,
nice
well,
to have it.
good you had it. So anyways, I feel like it's like such a mom thing. I'm like, yeah, no wonder she like she kept putting off traveling, because traveling for her is like such a big production. Like it's so big, and they just have so many people, and it just feels like a royal event. Like the other ones just kind of felt like people going like whatever, but this feels like if you saw them on the road, you'd be like, oh shit, there goes the royals. Which also felt, I mean, maybe there's something in Game of Thrones where they're on the road like that too. I don't know, but it feels like they have like a really big convoy of like royals to like make this like, it's like glamping. I feel like they're like it has to be the nicest way you could possibly be on the road, right? For Eleanor,
staying in tents and having staying
in tents, and so they're like on the road, and like at one point they stop along the road and have like a little like girl chat around the fire or something, which is where they start talking about the magic and stuff, and they're like, some people seek out magic, some people it seeks. And they're all like kind of gushing about it. And Lizzie's like, I wish I seek it. I wish I'd like experience it, kind of thing. And Lizzie's very whimsical and like, oh, I wish, like blah, blah, blah. They also bring Harris on this trip. So Harris we've already dealt with Hubert, who is left behind to be a soldier, and Hamish, who was the scaredy cat in the second trip. And now he's playing the harp. So now we have Harris, who till this point has just been kind of like writing everyone off and just kind of like not really involved, because I get the vibe he's like very teenage, like too cool, like doesn't care about anything.
And he and Merida used to be the closest, I think.
And
I think they used to have like deep sibling talks.
Yeah, so they used to be really close and they're not, and she doesn't know what to do. So she's really hoping this trip will change him and change her mom. She still needs to change Lizzie. So there's a lot riding on this like final trip. And so when they're all talking about magic at the fire, like Harris is like too cool for this. He's like, you guys are idiots, and like goes to bed or like whatever. And he has a dog, Brion.
I think it's pronounced Bryn, but there's an O in there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he has a dog, and him and his dog just are like, you guys are lame.
The dog's a real cap, not a great listener.
Yeah. The dog's definitely a cap. Definitely.
What? Like our dog?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're going on this trip. Oh yeah. And so then one night they're like camping on the road, and she hears a noise outside of her tent, and I don't really know she hears a hist sound or something, as if somebody's like trying to get her out, but I don't really actually know who the hist ever is from. I feel like we kind of move away from that. But Merida goes off and goes into the forest and finds a super dead patch of forest, like everything is dead, like in a circle. And then she looks down and sees Faradak like face down in the dirt, basically, with all this like death seeming around him, and he's like dying. And Lizzie ends up showing up, and she like recognizes Faradak. She's like, oh, that's Faradak. And Merida's like, what the fuck, you like recognize him? Because Lizzie's like trying to seek out magic, right? She's like a magic seeker, so she like wants to know things, I guess. It's a little vague as well, but anyways, so she's like, well, we should help him, like what's going on? And I think they piece it together, or does he? I don't think he can.
I think
say
he
anything.
says it. I think he tells them.
It?
Yeah,
because he's like pretty like dying, and he's like, "Don't touch me, my hands," or he's like, "These are the consequences of not ruining."
Yeah.
So he was supposed to ruin something, but he's like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna." But now he's like fucking dying. So Merida and Lizzie are like, like we gotta help him. Like, what do we do? And he's like, "No, I didn't." Like, he didn't want to. And how do they end up finding where he needs to be? We have to help him do his duty, Merida says. Let's take him where he needs to be. Help me take him to where it needs to be ruined. Then it says magic was a very strange thing. There would have been no way for Merida and Lizzie to carry him. Oh yeah, and they just like magically carry him because he appears differently to everyone. So
Because
he's
Lizzie
like as light
sees
as a
him as
child.
really light. Yeah.
Yeah, Lizzie sees him as a child, so he's really light. So, anyways, they eventually bring him to, I think this is the scholar's tent.
Yeah.
Or they bring him to like a scholar who's like reading, and like that's
Asleep
all
at the
they really
table
know
or
at this
the
point.
desk. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like asleep at her table and she's a scholar, and they know nothing else besides this. But then they're like, okay, Ferdak, like ruin her so that you don't die. And they leave him to ruin her so that he doesn't die. And then they go back on the road.
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and then we'll come back to that. But for now, that's like what happened. And so they go back on the road and they go to they make their third voyage, which ends up being on the island. Like I think they must have had to take boats. I think it's like actually on an island, and it's called Glen, or you had said it earlier. Island Glen. And they get there and it's an island full of girls of all ages, tons of them.
I'm back
and
in.
They're all like
I'm back in this story.
Orphans.
Yeah.
Orphan girls.
Even
Orphan girls.
better.
No.
They're all like learning how to read and sew and do this and do that. And they get there and Eleanor and the lady that rules there, which I don't actually have her name. Aylmuir? Oh yeah, Aylmuir.
Aylmuir.
Yeah. So Aylmuir, anyways, her and Eleanor clearly go way back, and Merida's like, what? Like, I knew you grew up in France or this or that, but I didn't know this stuff. And then it becomes clear to Merida that like Eleanor grew up here on this island of orphans, and that's why Aylmuir knows her. And Merida is just kind of like mind blown by how little she knew about her mom. Which I too was like, wow, you didn't know this. That is crazy that you didn't know this. So she's like pretty like wowed by the fact that her mom like clearly grew up here, and she's just like learning a lot about her mom on this trip. And they don't stay on this island very long or really do much there, but at the end, Aylmuir is basically like, you know, Eleanor, like we have too many orphans that we could even like deal with right now. Like it would be really nice if you took some back. I think even Ela or Lizzie are like, yeah, you should. Or, this was the one point in the book that I actually did tear up. I thought it was a really nice moment when everyone was basically like, yeah, Eleanor, you should take these orphans because like you're really, I'm paraphrasing here, but they basically tell her like how good she'd be at it and like how she was like kind of made to do this, and like she's such a good, compassionate person and such a like nice teacher and like figure that she should take I just thought it was really nice that everyone was like basically like, we all see your potential and this is such a no-brainer thing. Like they all like are just not surprised, or like they're like, yeah, this makes so much sense. And then you can tell that Eleanor is like really like into the idea of immediately, as well, as if like she just like never had thought to do it, but then as soon as the idea is like put into her brain, she's like, oh yeah. And I don't know, I feel like that struck me because I feel like the moment I decided to ditch law and go into animation, I was like, oh my god, this is such a weird thing to do. But then when I told my mom, I remember she was just like so happy for me and was like, this makes so much sense. And it was like these like clicking of like light bulbs that you just didn't see for yourself even. And I feel like that's what like happens to Eleanor in this moment, where she's like, yeah, like I should take back all these orphan girls, and everyone's so on board with it. And I just thought it was a nice moment. So they're like, okay, yeah, I'll send these orphan girls back with us. Like I don't think they go with them immediately. I think they're going to be sent to the castle in a bit or whatever, but they agree to take them, and it's just kind of this nice thing, and they're leaving. So now they're heading back from their third journey, and the Dazak shows up again. They stumble upon doesn't talk. They stumble upon this like village that's just recently been pillaged, and not by ruin like Feradak's ruin, by like human bad evil. slaughtering stuff. And they're all like, what the fuck? And it's like super dark, and they're like, this is really bad. And then the Dazak shows up and is just like takes a shining to Harris, who's with them. But Harris's dog like runs up to him and is like kind of being a dick dog. Well, not a dick, but he's just like, "Bleh," and goes up to like sniff him and do this. And he's like, you can't even control your dog. And then Harris has to go get the dog. And the Dazak whispers something into his ear. And it's just this whole big ominous thing. But Eleanor really stands her ground and is like, well, Harris, because the Dazak is like, we should take Harris. He should be with us. He is a fighter, and I like the cut of his jib, basically. And Eleanor is like, no, he's not going with you. And then the guy whispers something in his ear, and we don't know, but at the end of the day, Eleanor stood her ground and they leave. We find out that Eleanor was somewhat of a peacemaker in her past and was like doing all sorts of peacemaking bargains with people. So I guess she changed because she's finally seen her potential and is bringing in these new girls and whatnot. So Eleanor has changed.
And she actually made the journey as opposed to just
and she made the
planning
journey, which was change in itself, right? So Harris still hasn't changed. Has Lizzie? I
think Lizzie's like actually, so Lizzie's a flitter. She's just flitted between things in the past, but now she's actually like committing herself to magic. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Lizzie's like, starting to study more. Oh, and she's learning to read, and she's like actually like not flaking out on things and doesn't. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
she's learning to read. Yeah.
She's like doing stuff. So now we're in autumn. Obviously, time's running out. We've already done all these 3 voyages. Merida's stressing, like Harris still hasn't changed. He seems just as miserable as ever. Like nothing's happening really.
And he won't talk to her.
So Faradak shows up because he has to show her his side of stuff again. And she was like, oh, I was wondering when you'd show up or whatever. And he brings her to the scholar that she had helped him basically ruin, which I don't know. Do you remember this one? It like consumed her too. And so like he ruins all her scholarly things and she goes back to the orphanage and lives there, I guess. But I don't know why she got ruined because
so she had become a scholar. She actually she was a scholar, but she had actually become like a hermit basically and was just living there. So when he flooded her cabin or hut or whatever, it destroyed everything. And so then she went back to the orphanage.
And becomes like a teacher there or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he shows her this and she's like, okay, cool. But then he sticks around Dunbroch for a while. And
because everyone's seeing him the same way.
Because everyone's seeing him all of a sudden. And it takes them a while to realize it. Like they have some encounters with like people around the castle. And then Merida's like, wait, they're all seeing you the same I do. And they're seeing him like that repeatedly. And because of that, he can actually like kind of be a person, you know, because like normally no one remembers him. So he can't have like human experiences. But now he's like playing games with them and like talking with them. And it's just like this moment where it really just humanizes him. And she's like, you have a name, you have a face, like this is like kind of who you are. So he sticks around for a bit and everyone's kind of having a really good time with Faradak in the castle. So he's there, he's hanging around.
And then he goes away.
Does he just leave?
I think he catches feelings.
Yeah, does he catch?
She like discovers him sneaking out one night.
Yeah, she discovers him sneaking, but why is he sneaking away?
Because he got feelings.
Is it? Okay. I forgot to mention also that for that last, this is like, doesn't really matter, but for that last one where he shows her the scholar, she becomes heir. There's just like this one really short chapter where he's like, I'm going to show you the scholar. And she was like, well, that's really far away. And he's like, it's okay. We'll use magic. And she becomes heir. And they just magically are everywhere all at once. Wow. I don't know. Yeah. So she's on the island, like looking at the scholar and is like, whoa, yeah, I became heir. Cool.
Yeah. So he showed her the scholar after he stayed with her and then he disappeared. And that's when he leaves.
Oh, yeah. So he stays with her first, then he shows her and then he's like, okay, my job here is done. Now we're like, honestly, so at this point in the novel, we've got like, I don't know, fucking 20 pages left. We're like
40.
Almost done.
We're so close.
Sure, 40. But it's so tiny and it feels like there's so much that we like, not that there's so much that happens, but it's just like, okay, well, what? So anyways, Wolftail shows up again.
Bit of a rushed end.
Yeah, it feels very quick now. So he's gone. Wolftail shows up, the Dazaktak's right-hand man, and is like, hey guys, like, what's going on here? Like, Merida isn't staying with anybody yet. And I don't know, they're like, yeah, but we did this and we're taking in all these new orphans. Like, we've clearly integrated ourselves into the communities around us, which is what you really wanted from the beginning. So, like, lay off us, essentially. And I don't know how impressed Wolftail is by this, but I think he's
basically like, all right. He looks at everything that's happened and then he goes on his way. And so they're like, cool, that's done.
Goes on his way. And he's like, well, we'll see about that. And then why does Merida... I just read this like 2 days ago and I'm already like, what the fuck happened here? Because it's all so fast. So like she goes back because the deal's almost over. Harris... Oh, is it because she chases after Harris? Harris is like running away from the castle or walking away. He's mad. She's trying to connect with him because he's the last kid that still
She sees
has
him
not
out late at
changed.
night.
Yeah, so she sees him out and she's like, I gotta go talk to Harris. This is like a Hail Mary attempt, basically, because he's the only one who hasn't changed. And so she's like chasing him out and she's like trying to talk to him, but it's really hard. And he's trying to explain things to her. And I think he like finally opens up and is basically like, because Hubert, the other kids, the two other brothers, basically put it in Merida's head that he's being all mad because he wants to go with the Dazaktak.
And he hates their family.
Yeah, he's just grumpy because he hates our family and he really actually wants to go with the Dazaktak. And she's like, oh, like that sucks, but I guess I'll go talk to him about it. And so she goes and she's like, well, I know you want to go with them. And he was like, that's what you think? And he's like, no, like I don't want to go with him. And he basically tells her, like, you know, what he whispered in my ear was that our whole family's gonna fucking die, and if I say anything, he'll just come kill them sooner. So he's like, he wants me to join his army and he's gonna kill all of you. So now ruin is coming to their castle basically because of her thing, because someone's not changed, and because the Dazaktak was gonna like basically destroy them anyway. So Merida's like, why wouldn't you tell us? Like, why didn't you say anything? And he was like, because he said he'd get me, or he said he'd come sooner. And she is like annoyed. Well, not annoyed, but she kind of like scolds him, being like, you know, like, that's not true. Like, how would he know if you told us? And then Harris kind of gets more annoyed and like keeps walking. And he's like, you don't get it. You don't get it. Nobody believes me, kind of thing. And
he sort of alludes to being able to see things and know things.
Yeah. So it becomes more clear once the Kalak and Faradak do show up, because the bargain is over and we're getting to the trial. Like, did she do it? Did she not? And at this point, like, yeah, it's like Harris has been seeing things. Magic finds him as well. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why they were always close to each other before. But they kind of allude to like nobody ever believed him. Like his dad was like, what are you talking about? And his mom, like, which seems weird given the situation they all had with the bear mom, that nobody would believe the magic that he sees. But whatever. I guess he's just like been an outcast because of the magic. So he's been like hanging on to this silently. And anyway, so they make up and they're like all happy, which maybe is him changing. And then the Kalak shows up and is like, it's time to face your verdict.
Up as Isla.
Yes. Oh yeah. Plot twist. Isla
the handmaid.
And then Isla is like, oh my god, she was the Kalak. And then Merida was like, oh my god, you have been cheating, kind of.
What?
She's been there all along. And it was like, yeah, I was just there watching and guiding and whatever. And it had been alluded to earlier that the Kalak was a cheater. But anyways, so the Kalak is like, time to face your judgment. Faradak's like, oh, whatever. They're watching too. And it turns out that she did it. Enough of them changed, and she's not gonna, they don't need to do the ruin, which is great, but the Dazaktak's still on his way to kill everybody. So like, cool, I guess. So she goes back to the castle to deal with the oncoming. Oh yeah, they see them in the distance. They see like the armies coming in, and she's like, oh fuck, we gotta get back and warn everyone and like start like prepping for battle. Like there's this crazy battle happening now. So
I really hope she said actually that, oh fuck, I gotta get back.
Yeah, and so they run back to the castle, her and Harris, and everyone's like
awake.
In panic mode. Yeah, everyone's like in battle mode now. Like I picture like the battle in Beauty and the Beast at the end. Like everyone just like, you know, batten down the hatches. Like they're coming in. The women and children, I think, are sent upstairs to some room. And I think Fergus does send Merida up there. And he's like, it's because you're a fighter that I'm sending you, like, to defend. Like, basically, people are like throwing shit out of windows.
Lighting stuff on fire and throwing it down.
Yeah, everyone is just like kind of like doing their part a little, but it's looking bleak. They're like, you know, everyone's going to die. Like, as much as they're like holding their own a little, like there's so many of these guys, like there's nothing you can do. Merida's like, fuck, like I can't do anything about this. She considers for a moment running to the well that Lizzy's mom like had made a wish in, but she's like, I don't even have anything I could like, at this point
anything
she realizes
enough to her,
she doesn't care about anything. All of a sudden she's like, man, I don't care about anything enough to sacrifice. Like,
she's immaterial. It's like she cares about her family, but like she can't sacrifice.
Yeah, she's like, I can't throw my family in there, so like I have nothing to sacrifice to like even make a wish as a Hail Mary attempt. So everything's pretty bleak looking. But then she overhears the Kalak and Faradak talking in the next room. I guess they've showed up.
Kalak is offering him something.
So the Kalak, she overhears, she has like a miracle in her or something. Like she's got some magic built up for one miracle, basically. And she's talking to Faradak in the room, and she's like, listen, I know you love that girl. Like, I'm willing to use my magic to give you like a mortal body, and you can run away with Merida and you guys can be happy. Which does feel like a like read the fucking room moment, because it's like Merida's gonna be so happy to run away with you when her whole family's fucking dead. But okay. Which he obviously understands, because he was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, obviously I do love her, but you know, like, this isn't what we need to use this for. And so he essentially is like, I'm not going to use this miracle to have a mortal body. I need you to stop this thing on the castle. So she uses her magic miracle to basically kill all the Dazaktak, and they're
to turn the tides.
It turns the tides of the battle,
fates.
and they get fucking wiped out.
Basically, all of the Dazaktak soldiers, like, their families show up, and so the soldiers like convert to fight for Dunbroch, because they were like, oh, why are we fighting for this guy when we have our own families? So they like lose their army. I think that's the best way to end a war, because they're not going to just rise up again. So it ends well for them. All is good. And then Merida ends up seeing Faradak after this and is like, I heard you, basically. And they kind of just like have a moment after where it's like, oh, she's like, I'll follow you around everywhere. Like, I'll come do these ruins with you, like just to be with you, kind of thing. And he was like, you can't live your life following me around doing these ruins. And so they like have that discussion. And then he's essentially like, Laura, maybe you can make sense of this all more than I can. You know, you didn't really change.
Yes. Well, I think she brings it up. She's like, I know that technically I won this thing, but I didn't change, which does seem like a crazy oversight that this was her whole thing, but she didn't change, and she won anyway.
Said that that everyone had, but it wasn't true.
It was, and it wasn't true. So Merida's like, yeah, I really get that. Like, I didn't change, so that sucks.
You know what can change a girl?
Yeah. So she essentially
bang.
No, I wish they banged. No, she's like, your ruin, when you like touch things to ruin them, is like always different or whatever. Like, how will it ruin me? But I think they don't really know at the time ish, or maybe he does. But anyways, she essentially is like, I need you to ruin me so that I'll be good and change. And so he does, and the ruin, the way it takes his shape on her is that she forgets him or doesn't.
No, he breaks her heart.
He breaks her heart, and she'll never see him again. He's like, you will never see me, like, this is it. So that's the ruin, is he breaks. Yeah, I know. And so he breaks her heart.
He kisses her though.
He does kiss her, and then he does it, and then he's like, you're never going to see me again, and leaves. So her heart is broken, and it's heartbreak that really changes you, I guess. And then there's like one chapter after this where Lizzie, because Lizzie's been studying magic, essentially, she show her a rock, or does she bring her back to the rock? This is where Meredith does some more. I was like, I can't wait to ask Laura about this, because I think Lizzie like shows her a rock, or like brings her to something where they see the origin of Faradak.
So there's an epilogue.
Explain it.
So basically, like, Kalak and Faradak go about their business. So they're finding balance, destroying, and creating life. And then Merida did not go about her business as usual. So she is now a storm that wants to move roofs. And so she's like, rather than just like going everywhere and doing all the things, she's like going places and like learning and listening. And so she like listens to the queen teach girls to heal at the orphanage. She goes to the place where to Ardborough where Hubert was, and she listened to the value of order. She went home, and then with her mother, like, went across Scotland together, listening to her mother talk about peace. And then Lizzie shows her the handprint on Faradoc's stone. And Lizzie now has the ability to like do what Faradoc did to show Merida the
Lizzie's
memories.
Like godlike now. Okay.
And so she saw like the original Dunbroch and the hunt for the unnamed that came up before, and Kalak and a man trying to get it, and then I lost it. There's like 5 more paragraphs, and I don't understand what happens.
Weird.
Should I read it?
So my idea was just that Lizzie kind of explains that there are tricks that you can do to become the Faradak, and I feel like it's just implied that, you know, maybe we can pull off a trick and he won't have to be the god anymore and someone else. Because during the book, they did kind of say, like, if he dies, I don't know if gods can die, but if he, like, basically dies, like,
then
a new
someone else
person will be Faradak.
Yeah.
So it's like
in the Santa Claus?
Yeah.
Oh, good,
so
good pull.
yeah, like the Santa Claus. So I think at the end, it's just implied that maybe they could do a trick so that someone
to get
else can
him
be the
out of being
Faradak.
Santa Claus.
And then they kind of hinted that, and then they're like, and then there was a knock at the door, and then the book's over.
Yeah,
because it like started with him knocking or a knock at the door or something.
But
So
like
it is
they don't
very
even have a
implied that-
plan for the trick yet. I don't understand why
like,
you showed up
well,
so
that's
fast.
the thing. That's what's so fast. Where I'm like, okay, I get that the knock at the door is supposed to be him at the end. Like, oh yay, he showed up. Like they can live happily ever after, I guess. But like, no, like it's just one page where they're like, yeah, maybe we can do this trick, and then there was a knock at the door, and then it's over. And I was like,
Wow.
what happened?
Okay.
That's the end.
That's wow.
That was a lot. In
That
the
was a
last,
lot.
Like, 40 pages.
Yeah. That was a
So
lot.
there's a whole
Yes.
war. There's like
The
a
war
whole
is 8
everything.
pages. I don't understand how they like. There's this huge battle, and they're like, "Yeah, we only need 8 pages for this."
That was
As
Like
I
in
was
The
getting near the
Hobbit.
end of the book, I was like, oh my god, there's not many pages left, and like, what
You're
is
like, the
happening?
Dazaktar coming? What's going on?
Yeah, like what?
Like in The Hobbit, where Bilbo gets knocked on the head and Tolkien doesn't have to write the battle at all. It's just over.
Wow, that was wild. I have to say, when I said, yeah, this will be a quick summary, I really
it wouldn't.
believed it. I was like, Sam and Laura are going to give us
It
the
has
cliff
3
notes.
times as much plot as a movie.
I know, but I didn't.
was a lot.
I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. I thought we were like, oh yeah, we'd be wrapped up in 20 minutes. It'd be great.
That was the short version.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I think for the interest
Great
of time,
job.
we've talked about great job, everyone. Not everyone. Me and Brad did nothing. We listened. We did the hardest part of listening.
Do you feel like you know the story?
No, I mean, kind of. I would say kind of. I would say there's a lot of moments as you were talking, both of you, where it seemed like gobbledygook. Like, honestly, just like there's just a lot happening. Obviously, we're just
You
absorbing.
can't call Scottish gobbledygook.
I can and I
That's rude.
will.
It was some of the names, especially towards the end, because there was like
Kaliak,
Ferdak and
Fierdak.
Haliak, and
Yeah.
there was like all these
Elenglan,
ones, and I was like, wait,
Kinloch.
is this the god? Who's this one that you're
Azagtak.
talking about?
Yeah.
And then I forgot that there was more than just the 2 gods, and then like
There's only 2 gods.
who was the
Isla was Kaliach.
and which one was that? That was the creation one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think the way to approach this, from my part, Brad, you and I can talk about this together. How did you feel about the summary? Like being
Not about the summary, about the book.
No, of course. The
Having
summary-
heard the summary.
The summary was quite
Yes.
in depth and very good. But now that we've know the plot of Bravely, does it entice you to want to read it yourself or see a movie based on this?
I will say it when they were talking about it and like the plot and the way it's broken up, it sounded like a Disney movie to me. Like the story of it, I was like, I could see this as a Disney movie. It didn't feel removed from Brave, at least. But yeah, I did like that it was broken up into the seasons. I feel like if they did a movie of it, that would be a really cool visual thing. Just to, like I feel like I've seen a movie not too long ago that has like summer
Yeah,
and
4
winter.
seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be cool. Merida, I guess there was the attitude. I don't know, like the 2 of you said, there wasn't like a lot of dialogue, I guess. But I was wondering if
There
she would
is.
still
She
be
says
like.
ugh a lot. I have a note written that she
Yeah.
says ugh a lot. I will say about Merida, I had written in my notes, it was a little painful for me for like at least the first half of this book because she's just so unlikable.
Yeah.
Like she's mean to Lizzie, she's mean to her brother. She has like no sense of compassion for like anyone. And then for her to like vaguely change at the like not even really address that she's not changing for a lot of it, and I'm like, man, she's like kind of insufferable. I feel like Lizzie and her brother Hamish, like I feel like these are people she's around. Like Lizzie I think definitely has ADHD and is just like neurodivergent and like whatever, but she's just so dismissive of her and she's so mean to her brothers. And I'm like, man, like Merida, like why and you're following her, so you're like, I'm like, man, but I don't like her, so I don't know, and I'm like, I get that like she's supposed to change, but like it just, I don't know, it was like hard to follow her for a really long time because I was like, you're just a bitch, like to everyone all the time. And it was only by the end where she starts being like kind of nicer, I guess.
I think that the book would benefit from like a third person perspective as opposed to like following. Well, I guess it's not told in Meredith's voice. Yeah, you're right. It is. But I feel like we're very much like inside Merida's head the whole time. Whereas from a movie, like you don't hear the internal dialogue and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you won't hear all the ughs.
Yeah.
Leezy's being lazy again. Like, that's so lazy. And I'm like, you're being a bitch.
And I think like one of the things that's charming about the first Brave movie is the humor. And there's some attempts at humor in this, but I feel like they just don't come across as just like funny little things that people say, but like you don't feel that in the way that you might feel a line delivery in a movie. So it suffers for that.
Just from the outside looking in, and this is my only thought, is that like I could see this more as like a season of a TV show. I think would be like much more digestible because of the way it's like forward 3 voyages, 4 seasons. You know, like I don't want
do
4
like 2 episodes a season or something.
Yeah, something
I
like
think,
that.
or
Mini
longer.
seasons.
You could also have a whole season as a trip, and then like milk the show for 4 seasons. Because I do think what this book lacks is just more in-depth like themes and like ideas. Like there's so much there packed in, but nothing really sticks, and nothing. I'm like, what's the point? What is my takeaway from this supposed to be?
I definitely thought from the very beginning that the whole dude ruining things, it was gonna be like the beauty that comes like when a forest burns down, and then like you need to burn a forest down every once in a while so that it like nourishes the ground and blah blah. Like I thought it was going to be that kind of a theme, but no. But then you got to the part where he like literally just burned a castle of people, and I was like, oh, that's That's
and then he says
darker.
there, I am nature, though.
Yeah.
Like that's what I mean. I'm like, there's so many ideas, but I just don't feel like they were coherent enough for me to take away. Especially like, I don't know. I've read other YA. Like I like YA in general, but usually they just feel a little more pointed. And this one, like I said, like I know the theme was like change, but in what I don't really, it was just muddied a lot, especially with the trips and this and that, and it was just a lot.
My final thoughts on this whole thing is like there were sections that kind of piqued my interest. I mean, I guess I was interested hearing more about the gods and like the more supernatural fantasy stuff, because they do introduce it in Brave, but it's kind of in the background. But in here, it seems much more at the forefront. So I'm like, okay, what are they going to do with this whole idea of like, you know, magic and fantasy and gods and all these things? And I just, as you were all talking about it seemed, I don't know if I liked it more, but there was certainly more of it.
Yeah. And I feel like we didn't cover a lot of like a lot of the magic that's in the story isn't necessarily driving the plot, whereas we were really like, in order to cover everything, we were really just sticking to the big beats of the plot. So there is a lot more magic than what we heard.
Does she do archery?
Yes.
Yeah.
She does some archery.
There's some archery.
Yeah.
Okay.
A few times? Okay.
A few times.
I was worried because you guys didn't mention
You didn't mention it one
archery
time.
at all.
When
It's
she's
not like-
angry, when
Yeah.
she's fighting, there's some archery.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better.
I think, and I think this is and I'll get into the you know, reviews and the common consensus of everyone later, but I don't know if I personally love the idea of Merida falling in love. I guess, you know, that's my thing. I just like she in Brave, she's just such an independent woman who I want her to fall in love if it makes sense, but this whole falling in love with a god of ruin who's also
That she
But
hates.
she doesn't fall in love with him. He falls in love with her, and she asks him to like she for sure has feelings for him, but she's like, her asking him to ruin her is really because she recognizes like so much good has come from this change, and so much good can come from the change that he does, that she wants to be changed in that way. And the way he changes her is to break her heart. But I think like in breaking her heart, he makes her capable of love. So to me, it was like, yes, she's heartbroken, but it's not necessarily because she was in love with him and now he's left her. I think it's because like he wanted to give her the ability to love and that's him that she now has the ability, or that she like wants to chase down and be in love with. But I think that's like the thing that she couldn't do before the change was have romantic love, and now she can. if she wants it.
Because she couldn't be compassionate or like listen to anybody, which you need probably to do if you love someone. But like also I do have to, because I did think it was super funny, Laura, like the fact that when I started this book, when we got it, and I was like, ooh, I hope she like bangs this god of ruin.
Sam.
And Laura's like, no, Sam, that's not what this kind of book is, like whatever. And then you were like I was like, you're right, why would I even get my hopes up for such a thing? And it's like over half of the book I was like, yeah, whatever. But then all of a sudden she's like, well, I'm not gonna tell him, but he has like handsome features or something. And as soon as that was thrown out there, I was like, oh,
it's
my
on. It's
God.
on.
I was like, I was right. I can't wait to tell Laura. Like, she's totally gonna bang this god. But then the romance really didn't unfold. Like I was excited to like get what I wanted and then hopefully enjoy it and be excited. But it did feel one-sided, and it felt like I was like, well, I'm not really getting any joy from like they kissed, and I was like, all right, like I want to care more about this than
you want more hot and heavy action. It's crazy. Anytime Sam reads a book, she wants the characters to bang.
Classic Sam.
I've seen Sam reading the Bible. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Just the way she acts about it. Okay, let's get final thoughts here. Laura, give me your wrap-up feelings of Bravely, the book.
If the disappointment of Brave was that it promised us adventure and we didn't get it, this gave us some of the adventure that I was looking for.
So you liked it overall?
Yeah.
You liked it overall?
Yeah. Not a perfect book by any means. Especially, I think its biggest flaw is the rushed ending. But
and no
I
music.
Did like it.
And the music from Brave that you love the most is not.
Oh, no. I was listening to those songs on repeat as I was reading.
Okay. And Sam, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think at the beginning I was like not super sold, and then by the middle I was like, oh, I'm kind of on board, like especially because the rhythm I did like the like we're going on an adventure, we're coming back and debriefing, and I kind of liked that format. You know what you're going into, but I did feel like a lot of the twists at the end with Hamish and with Ela even, and with him falling in love with her, like all this shit kind of happens in the last few chapters that I'm like, yeah, like there wasn't a ton of setup for, like, I mean, maybe there was, but it just didn't feel as good as something that is like in its payoff should. So, which was disappointing because I was having a fun time. And then when the end was rushed, like, I don't know, if they were to like make this into a movie or a TV show, like maybe I'd check it out because it is kind of, I think it has potential for cool visuals. And I do think the ideas are kind of there, but I think as a book standalone, I'm like, it didn't really stick the landing, which is unfortunate. So I don't know that I would like recommend it to people necessarily, but I guess if you're interested in Brave, sure.
That's okay.
I don't know. Like I feel like I just wanted to feel more from the road. Like I'm all about, like it just seems like something that's so for me. The fact that they gave me what I essentially wanted at the beginning, at the end, and I was like, well, this doesn't actually like make me feel like the moment I felt the most at was at the mom taking the orphans, and everything else was just kind of like happening. So, and like I said, like the spooky part, I was like, I think I needed more, which is crazy to say with a book that's already like 360 pages, where I'm like, I needed you to give me more of this, but it was a fast read and it is YA. So I don't know.
They could have done like 4 books, like one a season, like Game of Thrones or some shit.
Yeah, I think that would have been.
Game of Thrones has come up a lot in this episode. Is it? It doesn't sound like it's just so loosely Game of Thrones.
I think it's the medievally-ness of it.
Yeah. No,
because I did like
incest
that,
like in Game of Thrones, I'm sure.
and I will say that I liked once they started talking about their royal duties a little more and sprucing up the castle and like the mom's trip. I was like, oh, I've never read it. It did make me want to read other books of this kind of genre because I was like, oh, like old school like Scottish kingdom stuff like is actually kind of cool. Like they're talking about like no windows and like I don't know, the world building and stuff of like being with a monarchy essentially. I was like, oh, this is like kind of neat to read about, but I want more now.
You have to read more from this author.
Yeah, well, she's reading.
Maybe this will be one of your questions, Tung, but I want to know if it was better or worse than the movie for Laura and Sam.
Yeah, let's hear it.
The story was better.
Yeah.
The visuals
The
weren't as
story was
good.
better.
Okay.
Well,
so book over the movie is what
I
you would
enjoyed
say.
this much more than the movie, yes.
Okay, yeah, this maybe potentially sexy god of destruction over Bear Mom is what you're saying.
Well, it feels less like, yeah, because we still get the mother-daughter relationship stuff in this. So I'm like, which is what you wanted to give me in the movie. So I'm like, I get that and more in this.
Okay.
And
The cover looks good. Merida looks great on the cover.
Yeah.
She has like quite fiery, wild hair, which is what you want. So
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is Laura and Sam like this more than the movie. Laura, you liked it overall, knowing that there's problems. Sam, you wish there was more, or you wish there was parts that was, explained more. But
I give it like a 6.5 out of 10.
okay, that sounds about right.
That's
Yeah.
not bad.
That's pretty good. Brad, what I'm hearing from you is you wish there was more boob lady in the book, but I hear ya. I'm with you. I want to go into the source material, and I'm going to breeze through the rest of these sections here.
Ooh, sorry, tongue.
Yeah.
Before you do this,
Okay.
Laura, real quick,
Yeah.
we didn't wee you.
Oh.
But I would say Eleanor fucks, Fergus fucks.
Eleanor doesn't fuck until she gets her shit together, though. Until
I was
after
gonna
her
say
change.
Eleanor. That's why I didn't wee her when you started, because I was like, I feel like she fucks once we learn more about her later, and like we've left the island and shit. So she fucks then. Fergus, I just like Fergus. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think he
he
fucks
always
whenever.
fucked.
He always fucked, and that's all I got.
Not Fjerdag?
Faradak?
Fjerdag?
I don't know,
Do you think
man.
he fucks?
I don't know. He seems like kind of a wiener, to be honest.
I'll tell you
That's
what.
the bad god.
I'll tell you
That's
what.
the
I
god.
wouldn't fuck with him. So to me, I think he fucks.
You think he fucks?
Yeah.
I mean, he's ruining people left and right.
Yeah.
You're right. He fucks.
Metaphorically and literally. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. He fucks. Okay.
So, source material, obviously, we're looking at the Pixar movie Brave here. Is this canon? Is the question people ask. And the answer is it is loosely canon until...
Loosely canon.
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a second. It's loosely canon until Pixar overwrites it. So the way that I think about this in my head is Star Wars, for example. Before like the new trilogy came out, there was a shit ton of books that came out. That was all part of the canon until Lucas and Disney were like, you know what? We will make more Star Wars after all on the big screen. And all those things that you wrote, there's too much of it. We got to axe basically all of it. And that is now in a parallel universe or whatever. So with Brave, it's kind of like the same thing where, Disney did give the go ahead to the author to use Brave and its material to create the book. But Maggie, she had a lot of creative control of how that went. There's a lot of stuff that, it's not like she could do anything. There is stuff within the parameters that Disney would have to be like, okay, this makes sense for the character to go through. But Maggie, she wrote the story essentially. So there is, Laura's trying to read something. I have more stuff.
It was published by Disney Press. So I feel like that's like a pretty good stamp of approval.
Yeah, okay. Well, I have some more things on that too. I'm going to read a few things. I found a really good interview with the author and just like the interviewee about like how this book became to be. Some of the questions that I'm not going to give you the answers for, I'll link the actual interview on the website at podcavern.com under the show notes in the description. But questions that are asked are things like, you started with the source material of the movie, but you also had Maggie's own source material, all this knowledge of Scottish history and lore. How did you stop that from overwhelming the story? Because it could, but it didn't, so few. Like, phew. Other question is, did you have to be careful not to contradict the film? Short answer is absolutely, obviously. And I'm going to read you this part of the interview. It's a bit long, but I'll breeze through it because I think it's interesting. So the question was, okay, let's talk about Bravely. What drew you to this project? Originally, Disney approached me about it. So they approached the author. Yeah. It was funny. I assumed that they reached out to me because they knew my background. Here they are asking me to write the sequel to Brave, which is deep in the Scottish Highlands, set in history, and here am I, a Scottish history major, having played the bagpipes competitively in college. It feels like they must have read some interview and thought, this is very matchy-matchy. Much to my amazement, when I got on the phone and said, this seems perfect, Disney said, right, because you write about magic. Well, also because I studied Scottish history for 4 years. You did? How lucky. I thought this is the biggest coincidence ever. So the Scottish history part was very satisfying, but by accident. And I love nothing more than diving into old dusty sources. This also felt perfect because Merida comes part and parcel with an enormous family, and I have an enormous family. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I'm always trying to write novels that capture that sibling dynamic. It was fun to have a brand new set of siblings to explore. So I'll link that interview in the show notes, but I thought it was kind of interesting how this came to be. I thought it was interesting that Disney went to her to create this book in the first place.
And seemingly did not do a lot of research at all.
On the author. It's like, you've written a lot of books about YA, I guess, so we want this to match up. I don't know.
And the rest was coincidence. Or was it magic?
Oh, yeah. Or was it fate? So there's no animation angle this time. Or
The cover's cool.
Specific particulars, but I will link that thing and that will cover a lot of it. So I want to go into the 5-star, 1-star right away of this episode. And there is no Google reviews, but I did get the 5-star, 1-star of Goodreads this time around.
Nice.
I'm looking at those right now, too.
So I'll say the general consensus of this book from like whoever ends up reviewing these things, it got 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads, 4.6 out of 5 on Amazon, 4.7 out of 5 on Indigo. So that's pretty good. I'm going to read you some 5 stars. And unlike Google reviews, they have real names attached to it. Like this one by Randy. Instead of Randy 5544, that kind of thing. Merida's bow at XX whatever. No, it's Randy. Randy wrote this. 5-star. I know it's wrong to review a book before it's even out, but I'm doing this to help rebalance the book's rating.
Captain Marvel?
It was announced a week ago, and there are already people hitting it with 1-star reviews? And for what? The people doing it haven't even bothered to actually say why, which is even more pathetic. When the book comes out in a year, I'll happily read it and write a real review. But for now, can we stop being so petty and sad? Come on. That was one of the top 5-star reviews for this book.
Is the next
doesn't
review?
even talk to the context
I know. Here's another.
Is the next review a 1-star review from Randy a year later?
No, it's not, but that'd be funny. Here's another 5-star review from Megna, and in brackets, it says, on a review writing break, bracket. She writes a lot of reviews. I've seen she writes 80 reviews. Anyways, no spoiler alert. There's a long review. I'm only giving you a little bit. This was an endearing and delightful read. I read it at a snail slow pace. There were a few parts that turned stagnant. It was an overall enticing read. 5 stars. What a glowing review for 5 stars. Honestly, those were one of the 2 top ones. I'm going to go to give you some 1 stars, like Madison Barnes over here. Hi, get ready for an absolutely scathing review because first of all, how dare? Second, this absolute travesty of a book cannot possibly be written by Maggie Stiefvater, who has written wonderful LGBTQIA+ books in the past. To simply have her completely disrespect the reality and nature of this story. She could not possibly be this disrespectful not only to the source material, but to the fans who desperately needed this story. If one absolutely had to be made, which I argue it did not, to be preserved by someone who we could trust to honor the truth of its tale. I thought that was Maggie. I was mortally wrong. So there you go.
I'm confused.
I think,
what truth did she not honor?
I don't know. I thought you two would cover that in this summary, and now I'm even more confused about that. Here's Jade. What the fuck? I was promised voyages. That's it.
Oh, there was more to that. I read
3
that
voyages.
one.
I don't know. I'm just reading you the 1 stars here. And here's Alana with a 1 star. Gonna be an unpopular review here. This story was cute, but for one, I didn't buy the romance. First of all, it's Merida we're talking about. The I'll be shooting for my own hand queen who established...
No, take that again, Tongue.
I'll be shooting for my own hand.
I regret asking you to take that one again.
Queen, who established to girls everywhere that they don't need romance to be loved, while Stiefvater turned that on its head, and worst of all, the romance felt forced. The story itself was interesting in some parts, but the novel could have been about a character who wasn't Merida, and it would have fit better. A little sad to see the representation Merida created going to waste here. Gorgeous cover, though. And it is a gorgeous cover, really it is.
It is a nice cover.
It's true.
And the majority of the 1-star reviews that I was kind of skimming through was basically saying how they liked the book to varying degrees, but the ending, like the very ending chapter, they were like,
It's fucked.
What the fuck? So that was like the
Yeah.
main thing, was just like, I liked it, but the end, everyone was commenting on the ending. So I was really
That's funny. Yeah,
interested.
when I finished reading it the second time, I was like, "What the fuck just happened?" Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. It was only
I
just
know.
now working through it with you, Sam, that I'm like, "Oh, okay. I think I get it." Yeah, they determined that like they can get Feardok out of the life as a destruction god, but they have
But
to.
they literally do that
trick
within 3
someone.
sentences. They're like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we think we
And
can
then
trick
there's a knock.
someone," and then there's a knock, and I'm like, "What the fuck? That's jumping a lot."
Maybe
And
it
I
wasn't
just-
even a Fearonok.
Yeah, and
Oh my
touching back
God.
to the
So-
one star there, where she said, "I was promised voyages." It's true though. They set out the first one. They actually spend a lengthy amount of time, what feels like there, because she's like learning that she really doesn't like the place where everyone's really strict, and she spends a few nights there, and she has to kind of sneak out, and so it does feel like a journey. The other two last like 1 chapter each in this
Yeah, they're
giant
very
book,
brief.
and it's like we got there, and then everyone was kind of weird, and then the whole place burned down, and then the third one is like we saw some orphans, and then they left, and I'm just like, man, these were the quickest fucking
The third one in
journeys, like,
particular,
ever.
I was like, "Oh, that's no wonder I didn't remember it because it was so brief."
They're barely there. They're barely
Which
there.
is weird because in the back of the book, they're very like, 1 princess, 2 this, 3 voyages, 4 seasons. Like they make it seem like a big deal, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, they sure do.
I want to go into hot takes over here.
Hot
Maybe brought to you by what is it?
Kinlocky.
The what?
That's the castle that burns down.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Oh my.
Sure.
We're not gonna get better than that.
No, that's.
I was gonna
that's
say
good.
by the hot orphans on the island.
Tongue.
I don't know.
No one said they were hot.
No.
Yeah.
The blood ox gloves.
Oxblood.
Oxblood gloves.
Oxblood.
Yeah.
Oxblood
Yeah.
gloves.
You got it.
Yeah.
Beautiful gloves.
Sam, do you have anything that's hot in the book that you want to shout out?
Faradak's ruin.
Okay.
Hey, his final ruin.
Damn.
His lukewarm kiss at the end, which you should have been more steamy. Anyways, obviously, Brad and I don't. I mean, Brad might, but I don't really have a hot take for this book. I mean, I guess the only hot take that I would have is that I would actually probably watch a Brave sequel. I don't know if I need it to be this thing per se, but I think there's something in this universe that is actually really interesting. And from the movie and this book, it seems like they're dancing around something that like could be really good and special. They have it. Like they have a great protagonist, they have a good world, but between what you've described here and the movie, it's like I don't know what's not connecting, that they haven't really figured it out yet.
Disney, let's give it one more try
Yeah.
with this Brave franchise. Let's see what you got.
And the last hot take I have is Bravely is such a dumb name for a book. Why isn't it called Braver?
They say it at one point near the end. They write, and she did something bravely or something, and I was
my
like, "Oh my god!"
I didn't even
Said
notice.
something. Oh, they do it.
And Merida looked at the camera and winked.
Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme.
No. Braver would have been an amazing title, but Bravely sounds kind of silly. Anyways, Brad, do you have any hot takes before we give it to the ladies?
I think after hearing them walk through the whole novel and then us discussing like how it could be done and thinking about it as like a TV show on like Crave or something, a live action version of this I think would be actually pretty cool.
Didn't they do that in that Once Upon a Time TV show? You know, when they like grab live action people and like.
But I mean that was like very whimsical. I'm thinking more like not Game of Thrones. That's just on my mind because we've been talking about it. But like
Something
just kind
a
of
little
like
grittier than the other.
a little
live
bit like
action.
because she's more grown up now, so it's like put that away. But like I feel like it'd be awesome to watch like some redheaded Scottish girl just like
Yeah. Make it
adventuring around and
Only
like,
they'd probably
doing shit.
cast Timothy Chalamet.
as Merida.
He would do a great Merida.
Yeah.
He's got the hair, just be red.
All right, Sam and Laura, whatever you have, now's the time for hot takes if you have any.
I saw an interesting take online that I can start with. And for some of those 1-star reviews, like one of them mentioned queer love stories were kind of, and this review was arguing that bravely makes it canon that Merida is queer because even though Fearadach takes on the form of the person he killed and Merida sees him as a young man, he's technically a genderless being.
I read that and I was like, this feels like you're stretching.
It feels like a stretch.
To be a queer, but they never talk about him looking like a woman. Even like,
he's a nurse or something at one.
Is
like
he
he's
a nurse
a nun.
in one?
I feel like they
which
see him
maybe
as a
the
woman.
nurse is a man. I don't know. Probably not in these times, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a stretch for me because I'm like, they didn't imply.
Yeah.
If they did it was by accident. They are not. They're not trying to write a queer love story here.
Although part of me is like, maybe Maggie Stiefvater was like, they would never let me write a queer character, but I can technically make her queer by making him genderless, even if I don't say it.
I was gonna say, I don't see Disney giving that the thumbs up.
Yeah, no.
But then they very like, yeah. I like I feel like Merida should be Arrow. Like I think that's the universe. I this isn't really a hot take, but I guess if I were to see more like Merida stuff, I'd like to explore her being like asexual.
I feel like that was the representation piece that they were probably actually alluding to.
That's what. Yeah, but everything about this was a little too vague for me to really take anything away from it. I just wish it took a stand on literally anything clearly enough that I could take away anything from this book.
You just know that like Bob Iger, whoever it was reading this book and got to the description of Fearadach and was like, he's hot, yes? And then at the end,
you know who
there's
I
some
was
other ending.
picturing
He's like,
him
they
as?
kiss, yes? Who?
Like, how did you picture him?
I pictured him as like, honestly, it just occurred to me that I'm picturing him as like the live action version of the human beast in Beauty and the Beast, but like smaller.
Oh,
interesting.
So no one in particular.
Okay, because like by the end, I was like, maybe I'll start enjoying this more if I picture him like dreamy, so that I can like be more invested in this love story. It didn't work.
You know, I kept picturing, the bad guy from Big Hero 6 when he's in like that black cloak kind of thing, but without the kabuki mask, like without the like from behind, just like that, like just kind of that shape. That's what I was picturing the entire time.
Oh, I pictured Jude Law.
Yeah.
Nice. We know Brad's type.
Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah.
So I was picturing not like any of you. I was picturing like Lee Pace, hot elf in like the Hobbit series. He's like that hot daddy elf.
Wow, he really truly does take different forms. This god here.
Yeah, but I also I say hot daddy elf, but like also not that this looks like him, but Draco Malfoy's dad, like just like super blonde
kind of
and
hair.
like like angular features. I picture him pretty like skinny though, like in his clothing,
skinny.
and so like skinny but still like defined, but like with literally like white. I pictured like very white blonde like hair, but
Did
maybe
he have
it was
blonde
more of
hair?
a-
Did he have blonde hair?
Yeah.
I missed that
so.
part.
I
He
feel
did
like
have
We
I
didn't
must,
mention it.
missed
Yeah.
that part.
We did not mention
We left
it
it a lot, guys.
description. We
Didn't
left
sound like
out.
it.
we left it at the oxblood gloves.
Yeah.
I'm now picturing Keanu
She
Reeves
did
with blonde hair.
it's vague,
Basically.
but at one point, because like I said, she wouldn't tell him what he looks like to her, and they do have a moment later where she's like, "You look kind," and you look says all this stuff, like kind of nice stuff in their like somewhat romantic moment, I guess. But when she's explaining him to someone else, or there's one point in the book where they're like, he looks like what an attractive person would look like, and I was like, that's okay.
Right.
Like,
Up to your own interpretation.
She really phoned that description in.
Yeah.
Any other hot takes, Sam? Do you have anything, or hot takes or final thoughts? I think is where we're at with this episode here. So, Sam, Laura, anything final you want to say, or a hot take? Anything?
Since starting the book again, I've been throwing myself into finishing a bunch of unfinished DIY projects around the house. And I'm not convinced that's unrelated to Fergus's change. I think I'm Fergus.
You're a real Fergus.
I'm like, I gotta clean these tapestries. I gotta get all of the crap out of this chimney. I got to replace those window panes. Gotta put on a coat of fresh paint, you know?
You know what?
That's been me.
On this, did Hamish change, or did people around him finally start accepting him and their perception of him changed? Because I don't know that he...
So he said that he wanted to become a harpist. And he then
Sorry, not the
pursued it.
harpist kid. Sorry, this is the issue with
Oh,
all the
Harris?
kids. Harris.
Yes, because he shared his thoughts and feelings with Merida,
Okay.
which he hadn't done since they were children. And he he trusted her again. He wasn't trusting
I guess my
anyone.
final thoughts are I hate when things spell things out too much for me, but I wish this book spelled out more of what it wanted me to take away from.
That last chapter in particular.
Yeah.
That epilogue.
Yeah.
My last take is at one point early in the book, Merida said that she wanted a revolution, and she got a revelation.
Was that your best Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Yeah.
Try again.
Hey, yo.
No, that's Angelica.
Oh, it's Angelica. Oh, okay.
You want a revolution? I want a revelation. So listen to my explanation.
All right. I think
Anyways.
with that, it's time to wrap up our time with Bravely, our very first and maybe only Disney book review. I don't know.
Pixar Pals Book Club, PPBC.
Yeah, it's a
Make
long-
it a thing, everybody.
Needed more. I was gonna
Needed
say
more?
dick, but
Hey,
But
you know what?
you
There
did.
is another. I saw there is another book in the series, or not in the series, but from Disney Press. That's based on Eric from Little Mermaid. So I wouldn't mind taking that one.
probably
for a little
also
swim.
does not have enough dick.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
A lot of Finn, though.
plenty of recorder. Yeah, you get the origins of
Ew.
his recorder the entire time. Okay, well, that's our episode of Bravely. If you like this episode and us, I guess, diving deep into some of these books, I like, honestly, I don't really know the other book. This is the first time I'm hearing that there's another book in Disney at all.
you know
so-
what? If there's an Eric book, oh guys, I would love if next time Tongue and Brad.
Tongue
have
and
to read the book.
Brad. Tongue doesn't read books.
I don't read, but I'll read an
please,
audiobook at
please.
best. I mean, for you guys, I probably would, and for the cast,
It would be so
obviously,
funny.
and an audience. But yeah, if you like this episode and have thoughts on Bravely, I'd be very curious what people thought of this episode of reviewing a book, and B, if you ever read this book. So email us at dummies@podcavern.com or pixarpals@podcavern.com.
Or
Love to hear
book
it.
club.
At podcavern.com. That'd be really good. Brad, what did you link here? Is this Eric book here?
Get
Prince
it.
of Song and Sea.
How long is this? Don't make us do this. Don't make us
my God, can
do
we
this.
please?
God, you can do it. You can do it, guys.
Okay, but I promise you, if Brad and I do the summary for this, it will be way. It'll just be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
That's what you think now.
Eric. He found a recorder and he played it. The end. No, I don't know. Okay, maybe I'm gonna say maybe for this.
We'll see how this
Hopefully
goes.
there's
It's
a
technically rated a bit better than
Is it?
Bravely.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
Is there a graphic novel version?
3.76.
Okay. If there's another vacation and Laura and Sam surprise Brad and I with 5 cocktails and this book, then I would consider it for sure.
It's gonna be like getting iced.
Yeah. It's like, ooh,
That is how I imagine it.
I can't wait to have a cocktail. Oh, it's the Eric book. Thanks. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode of Pixar Pals. Join us next time for whatever we end up doing. But until then, Laura and Sam, if you want to sing us out in a Scottish ditty, go ahead.
I will run, I will fly, taste the wind and touch the sky. I will fly. Oh, Cap just walked in to tell me to shut up. Da, 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 da.
Would ya?
Would ya?